He can be a princess here and there, but he doesn't have a big ego. Having someone who's really damn good at something and not coming along with a big ego is a real blessing.
I'm a terrible salesman. I hate selling. I hate self-promotion. Laurenz, great in front of people. You need that balance of personalities and skills and, affinities and so on.
If it's something where the whole is more than the sum of its parts, basically. And I think that's kind of what we're offering. Once the clients actually see this, it's way more than just adding those two things together, because once you bring it all together, it becomes a whole different level of marketing that you can do.
I think it makes a lot of sense to find that partner. I mean, at least and especially in tech, and you ever talk to someone about getting funding? I mean, no one wants to talk to a solo founder, right? I mean, because that's just, there's too much liability there. I mean, you get hit by a bus, you're done, right?
But I need someone else to work with, because otherwise I'm going nuts. I've been working with the same people for a long time, and I felt like I needed some more energy or new energy in there.
We all had pretty significant amount of skin in the game. So none of us was going to let it fail.
I think what they definitely should do is...
Hello, you beautiful people, and welcome to the Solo Source podcast. My name is Joeri, and on this show, I have honest conversations with real people who work for themselves. This is a very special episode because normally I have conversations one-on-one, but for this episode, I've got two people joining. We're going to be talking about something that a lot of solo professionals really struggle with, which is how do you build strategic partnerships without losing your independence. Laurenz Koehler is a growth-focused marketeer who blends psychology, strategy, and innovation to drive revenue. And Eddie Shin is a data specialist and consultant who turns complexity into clear decisions. We talk about how I originally brought the two together, how they show up in front of clients as one team, and what it really takes to make a partnership like this work in practice. As always, I'll be back at the end of this with a couple of thoughts, but for now, enjoy my conversation with Eddie and Laurenz. Two of my most favorite people, my favoritist people in Singapore, Laurenz.
In Singapore.
And Eddie in Singapore, yeah. Joining me for the Solo Source podcast. I'm very excited because this is a very different angle to all the other conversations I've had. I've recorded a bunch. It's all about people who work for themselves, independent professionals. And this is going to be a bit more about, cool, so when do you partner up with somebody? When do you pull your resources together? For the people who don't know you, I'm just going to start with Laurenz over there. Who are you and what brought you to where you are today?
So I'm German originally. I live in Singapore. I have been through a long career in advertising, and I went around the world in the US and ended up in Singapore. And then I started my own business in 2009. I wanted to get out of advertising, was enough for me. And I started like a marketing kind of consulting gig, basically, using a psychological framework to have, promise deeper insights and really understand how to motivate people to buy things, to change behavior and so forth. So I did a lot of research and all that. Been running this company since 2009. And yeah, sometimes better results, sometimes less better results. It's like a little bit going up and down, like every business. We're like 3-4 people in average, and then we usually have like literally 40-50 like freelancers that work with us to cater to whatever needs are out there in the market and make it very flexible for us to sustain our business and not get into trouble. And that has worked really well for us. So we weathered COVID quite well and everything like that. And I'd say 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago, we partnered up, and I think that's kind of what brings me to this podcast here today.
Oh, quick one. If you are enjoying these episodes, I put a lot of time, energy into this, my guests as well. If you are enjoying them, make sure you leave me a little comment if you want, or a question, or share this episode with somebody who really needs to see it or hear it. All right, let's get back into the episode. Thank you for that, Laurenz. Eddie.
So I've been in Singapore good, 15 plus years, and I co-founded my company, Tail Risk Analytics, back in 2014. We started out as this, pure play data science consultancy. We were building big data platforms and using machine learning to model and predict consumer behavior. I guess around 2022, Laurenz and I met, we'd already met, but we partnered up more officially. And we've been blending psychology and research from his side, the data and AI from my side, to still kind of do the same high level thing, which was to understand consumer behavior, right? Or understand and predict and explain consumer behavior.
So that's kind of how you met up. Because if I remember correctly, Laurenz, you said, "I'm looking for somebody who does this. Do you know somebody?" Do you
Yeah.
know what the brief was? You had a client brief. You needed something.
Yeah. So my issue was, so I get the itch every other year, basically, where I feel like I need to do something new. I need to reinvent myself, because I'm my biggest worry on my mind always, but especially since I started this business, is I need to be relevant, and I will not be relevant if it's just me with my old spiel. I always have to kind of bolt on something else and make myself even more relevant. So I had one of those moments, and I think it was a more serious moment. And I called you and I said, "Look, I'm a little bit desperate. I don't know where to go. I need to find something." Then you came up with the idea of saying, "Oh, Eddie is the right guy." And I met Eddie before when we had our casual little sessions after work. I came to a point that was really serious for me, actually. I was really contemplating where to go, and that opened up a whole new avenue, very challenging for me because I have no idea when it comes to big data. And I'm sure Eddie can sing a song about it, teaching me what the hell is going on. I think ever since we met and we partnered, it's been so much fun. And frankly, of course, AI is the big talk. And of course, I'm leveraging that. So I have to admit that. But when I have my conversations with executives, obviously I'd be more relevant by saying our usual line is we have data science and social science, right? So bringing those two things together, the psychology and the data science. And that always kind of brings you to really good conversations. And that's what the business is all about. Get to that conversation where they open up and tell you about a problem and how you could potentially solve that problem. So it's been very, very helpful and very productive, I say.
And what was that like for you then? Because Eddie, you're on the other side, and I basically, again, you really knew each other, so it wasn't a complete cold introduction, but it was basically Laurenz has an idea, basically, you guys chat. What's that like for you then?
The partnership with Laurenz has been great in the sense that, I always say we build these models using historical data to, predict future behavior. And so we can do things like tell you, hopefully, what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, to whom it's going to happen, but we can never tell you why, right? And the brief, invariably, beyond the model that we build to predict things, still has to go to usually a creative agency and whoever else in the marketing department, let's say, and they still need to be able to explain and tell a story about why people are behaving this way, just even make the creatives and the copy and all this kind of stuff. And also, it's very difficult to use historical data to predict something new. So you're doing a completely new product category that you're launching. Maybe you can find some analogs and say, oh, it should be like this, or there's some kind of affinity between the way people behaved here and they will behave there. But so I think the psychology is super useful at giving that whole layer of the why and the storytelling that you need. It's way more engaging to the stakeholders than sort of my more dry technical shtick. So I think that was the biggest plus I saw. I feel like the biggest thing for me though, up front was, as you run your own company, you come to learn pretty quickly what you're good at and what you're bad at, or what you have an affinity for and what you don't. I'm a terrible salesman. I hate selling. I hate self-promotion. Had a lot of anxiety doing this podcast with you because I have to talk to you about myself, right? And so, Laurenz, great in front of people. You need that balance of personalities and skills and, affinities and so on. I can never, absolve myself of, responsibility to be client facing and to sell and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, if there's someone else on the team who's just a rock star at it, I'm really happy to play, supporting actor in the film. So
I love that. And I think that kind of hits the nail on the head of this, why I wanted to have this conversation. Because when you work for yourself, I've been doing my own thing for about 12 years, I think. I work with a group of friends, as you all know me quite well. One of the toughest things I see left, right, and center of people around me, you're making the product, whatever the product is, a service, you have to sell it, and you have to structure everything around it to make sure everything keeps running kind of thing. Very few people are good in all three. They always have a preference. They'll always be better at something else, which to me is probably good reason to partner with somebody else, right? So Laurenz, for you then, in this case, this was a brief, Eddie just said you're great in front of clients. This brief came from you. Am I seeing that right?
So I'm very big into psychology, obviously, and that's kind of my business more or less. And I do this in all sorts of ways. And when I think about my business, I believe I can sell better if I appear to be bigger than just me and myself and I. So I had that stick from the early beginning. I will always have people with faces in my proposal that are representing all the different services with lots of case histories because of these people. So you always come across as a much bigger and more proper agency, let's say, than when you just come in on your own. So, and I think when it comes to trust and being willing to give some substantial amount of budget to someone, I think coming across trustworthy, of course, is the number one, but also coming across of someone that is like bigger and has more potential and so forth. That's one. Then two is being flexible in answering briefs, right? When clients come, oh, I need help here and there, I can answer that from Eddie's angle, from my angle, and I have a few other angles, right? So it gives me way more flexibility and more leverage, basically. And frankly, I just enjoy it. I think Eddie and I, we have been working at least like 3 years commercially in the sense that we have clients that we worked on together. Till today, we don't have a proper written agreement in the sense like on how we're dividing money and how we're going to do this. We're actually exploring this together, and case by case, we're figuring out how we're going to divide the money. And we have a clear aim to come together as a joint venture or maybe even as one company. But it's not fixed in stone because we don't know yet how the market will react and where the money is and how we need to come across and all that. So we're still quite flexible in this. And we've been landing quite a few really interesting projects. So I'm super happy. But of course, we need to drive it further and hopefully drive it bigger.
Nice. I love what you said around trust, because you're kind of extending your, I hate to say the word brand, but I mean, you are extending your brand. Like if you, any of you come to me and ask me for some help on something and I introduce somebody to you, I say, hey, I know the perfect person who can help you decorate your kitchen or tutor your kids, whatever it is. I'm extending my integrity kind of to somebody else, right?
Yeah.
There's a risk in that. How do you make sure that you're kind of on the same line then, at least on what is expected? How do you do that?
Well, I mean, it's on you, but flip it around. And let's say you have a bunch of clients that you have worked with, and they do trust you because they know they can rely on you. So when you come in and you would recommend myself or Eddie or anybody else, we have a much bigger chance to land it, right? Because you are the one that basically opens that door. And the client wants that. The client wants that service, and he wants someone to say, this guy is good. I've seen him working this, so you can trust it. Because they're all scared to lose their jobs and lose their budgets and whatnot. So I think it goes both ways, right? So I'm extending my trust with Eddie, yes, but equally kind of it's the other way around than for the client side through you. So I think that's really critical, actually.
Eddie?
Well, so if you're asking about it in the kind of more narrow case of just, like the relationship between Laurenz and myself, I think it's like we've been lucky. We are both good people. We have a good relationship. We trust each other. I mean, and all this kind of stuff. But I also feel like there are a lot of anecdotal lessons from the wild of how not having something all drawn out, put to paper and whatnot, can turn into a disaster. I think it's a balancing act, or it depends. I mean, Laurenz says, I always say it depends to everything for every question our clients ask us, because it makes me think of like when you're trying to start something up with a client too, like on a pitch or a brief. I mean, it doesn't help you to put all the caveats up front and try to get something, rock solid in writing for all the possible conditions and variables and variances or whatever. I mean, sometimes you just have to take that leap of faith so that you even get the business, and it's a problem for later. And in some ways it's a good problem because at least you have the client and I think in our case, I mean, I had the experience with my very first company. I was the last partner to join. I mean, we spent so much time and we're so much like kind of bad blood because of, how to do the equity split. And the thing is if you do it too early, where it's not necessarily clear what everyone's bringing to the table, I mean, luckily we made it work, but you could end up torpedoing something before it even gets started. So I think sometimes you have to take the leap. And at the end of the day, we've always just had a very good gentleman's agreement about, making sure things are fair. And at some point, yes, we want to, formalize it in one way or another. But at this point, it makes sense to, you see it as a win-win, right? And I think even when we look at other potential opportunities with other, other partners, I think we would approach it with the same attitude. I mean, it needs to be a win-win unless you're planning for it to be a one-off engagement, right?
Which, by the way, there's a case for that as well. Yeah, I've had one-offs where I'm looking for something very specific. I go into a network, I just work with somebody.
Sure.
Also, maybe a one-off sometimes can be good just to get a bit of a taster without overcommitting yourself to somebody. I've done this where I just brought in somebody and I realized I love the way they work. I love what they deliver, but I didn't enjoy working with them. It's possible. Maybe we're not aligned on how we approach clients, for instance, or how we face clients. And for the people listening, by the way, I work with a network of friends, and we always have a rule: one face to the client. Whatever happens, we'll deal with that in the background. One face to the client. How do you position yourself to clients then? Because at some point you show up to people. How did you position yourself? As two separate entities? As one thing? Do you have a name? What does that look like?
What we agreed on is that we play it under under my company's name for several reasons, because we are quite well established with the government here and with some other clients. So we agreed on that. Eddie has, a formal kind of way of being tied to us, even though at the end of the day, he has his own company. But to the client facing, we're one entity under my name, mostly, I think, or so far always under our company. But I mean, we would be flexible depending, right? If Eddie has an ex-client coming up, I'm happy to serve under his name. So we're both not that ego-driven, I'd say. I think we can take that, we put that in the backseat and make it work for whatever is the occasion. So far, it has to be had to be under my name for the reasons of the clients that I knew, basically.
From your point of view, then, we talked about kind of how do you face clients. Is there anything from your side you want to add?
What you yourself said earlier about trying to present one face to the client. So I do think that that's paramount. I mean, your client doesn't want to know how the sausage is made, right? And it's pointless to encumber them with the details. So, you put one face forward. I mean, even if we were working with other partners, I mean, it's like trying to do a consortium model. I mean, you always put one face forward, even in a formal consortium, right? I mean, at the end of the day, client only wants to bill one party, right? They don't want to split their bills. So I think that makes complete sense. And I think, like Laurenz was saying too, I mean, I think it's also a very practical concern. His company has certain registrations for, certain kinds of government contracts. So for those, it absolutely would have to go through Laurenz's company. I think if we had, maybe a more pure like ML, AI sort of project, and then we were trying to, upsell them on the psychology or the research, we might go forward with my company as the front facing, or we were, like Laurenz said, revisiting one of our previous clients. I think that would make sense. But I think it's purely a matter of like, it's just a pragmatic concern.
Yeah.
What makes more sense, or what shows best to the client?
When does it make sense to partner with somebody else, and when does it not make sense?
I think partnering makes sense to me if you feel like in the market you are more relevant, if you offer something as well as what you're doing currently, and you're trying to expand your scope in terms of what you possibly can do, and you feel like this is resonating in the market, then that becomes a strategic pillar in your offering. So it makes a lot of sense to partner in that sense, because you want to grow into this field and make this part of yourself, basically. So I'm very eager always to be very close to Eddie and learn a lot on what he's saying. And I think he equally kind of tries to kind of pick up on what we're doing, because we feel and see it as a strategic offering moving forward that will be appreciated by clients, and it's not a one-off or something that goes over quickly. So I think partnering, if it's strategic, if it's more than just a one-off, if it's something that clients are excited about, if it's something that where the whole is more than the sum of its parts, basically. And I think that's kind of what we're offering. Once the clients actually see this, it's way more than just adding those two things together, because once you bring it all together, it becomes a whole different like level of marketing that you can do. In our belief, anyway.
I thought about a flavor of this. I mean, just, thinking about this series that you're running, Joeri, about really the more true like solopreneur. The partnering thing just makes a lot of sense from mixing and matching, capabilities, of course, right? Like I said at the very beginning, where, I'm weak at sales, and Laurenz is stronger at it, and so on. But I also think it makes sense just from what's the no man is an island? I mean, like, you really can't do, you might be able to do everything yourself for a little while, but you can't sustain doing everything by yourself for, any real length of time. I mean, you can't ever take a holiday. I think it makes a lot of sense to find that partner. I mean, at least and especially in tech, and you ever talk to someone about getting funding? I mean, like no one wants to talk to a solo founder, right? I mean, because that's just, there's too much liability there. I mean, you get hit by a bus, you're done, right? I think there's a lot of reasons it makes sense to look at whether it's strategically because of a client bid or project, or it's really just for your own sanity and health, frankly.
Which is an interesting point, Joeri. If you remember, when I asked you about, do you have someone that you could recommend, I was asking you, in terms of content and data and, partnering with somebody who can bring something to the table, but I need someone else to work with, because otherwise I'm going nuts. I've been working with the same people for a long time, and I felt like I needed some more energy or a new energy in there. And I think it comes to what Eddie is saying. It's like if you're sitting in your own little soup and you keep on cooking and cooking, and you don't get like an injection or something else, you get mad, So, and I think that was one of the issues as well when I approached you, because I like you for who you are as a personality, and I know anybody who's kind of linked to you would have some sort of energy, right? So I think that was part of it, actually, if I remember that correctly. And I got what I was asking for. So, and it's beautiful. But it goes along with the risk, as you said. It can also go haywire and could like, okay, this guy is a nutcase or something. But then you need to still try, and then you try with someone else. So.
Well, one of the first things I told you, and I think both of you, is because you're both my friends. I basically said, here, you two have a chat. I'm stepping out of this. So if this works, great. If not, don't come crying to me. Which I think is also important, because again, you're extending part of that personality. You might be beautiful people, but that doesn't always mean it works well together. You can be both fantastic people, great in your own respective fields, doesn't mean it works well together. I want to go back to like managing expectations. How do you manage expectations from let's say, quality of delivery up to what it is that you offer, how much energy you put into things? How do you manage that?
Well, I have my own expectations in Eddie because I've seen his work, and I was pretty confident, that he can deliver. And I remember still when we did our first project with Maybank back in the days. I have to say, of course, because we put a lot of effort into this case, and we had multiple meetings with the board and the C-level people, and eventually they gave us some money, and then we needed to deliver, right? And I'm sure Eddie was equally nervous about what I was delivering while Eddie was delivering, and it turned out super well. And of course, everything can be better, and we learned from how we work together and everything. But to an extent, you have to trust and believe. For that extent, and then you can move forward. And now and then we move to the next project, next one. And now I would close my eyes and say, look, I have no doubt, but it takes a little while to get there. And you're building that confidence by checking on it, by you being the first person, and you've been talking very highly about Eddie as well. And I think there's certain ways you kind of increase that, but at the end, you still have to trust.
Yeah. Thinking back to that project with the bank, in one sense, it came off surprisingly well, given how little sort of formal guardrails we had set up for how this, collaboration is supposed to work, and how we're going to, we knew what had to be delivered and who was supposed to deliver it, but still, we weren't like, no one was on each other's back or something, even though it was kind of our first big project together. And so in some sense, yeah, it's amazing that it all, turned out, I would say, by and large, roses. But as a kind of a retrospective on that, it was in part that I mean, we all had like pretty significant amount of skin in the game. So none of us was going to let it fail. Because actually, what does it matter, even if we had formal guardrails? I mean, I think about that every time you do a contract with the client. I mean, great, you have these clauses that protect you if the client fails to, deliver whatever they needed to do. But I mean, what are you going to do? Are you going to sue your client? I mean, everyone's already lost at that point. So, yeah.
And if I may add on this, I think to me, I've been, as I said, I've been doing this business now for like 17 years. Along the way, I had so many different partners and whatnot that I brought in, and some I dropped immediately. And to an extent, you have a sense a human sense of who you can work with and who you cannot work with. You have to trust your instinct to an extent. I mean, what is it worth? And we have like a great contract and it's all written down on deliverables, but then the deliverables are kind of crap. It doesn't mean anything. So, I mean, at the end, I think at least that's who I am, I suppose. You have to trust in your instinct. You have to trust in what you think this person can deliver, and then just go with it. And if you don't, then don't. And I've done many of those before where I didn't.
For people who work for themselves, what are the do's and don'ts of partnering with other people? What should they definitely do and definitely not do?
I think what they definitely should do is striking up conversations to everyone or everything that they find relevant. Just for the sake of being in the loop and understanding what's going on. I mean, you have to do that. I'm a firm believer that as a solopreneur in particular, or as a small company anyway, you need to stay relevant. We'll be out of business, especially now that the times are changing so much, even more so. So you need to stay in contact with everyone around your business. So everyone that are either in the value chain, up or down, right and left, just look at everything that's there, that there is. Then that's one. Then two, you have to stay in contact with your clients and listen and hear what their need is, and figure out what the connection is between those two things. Find someone that you trust and try something out. And even if you suffer a loss, or even if there's something goes wrong, you need to try. I think the don't is, don't stay away from it. Don't think, oh, I can do it myself and it's fine. I mean, fair enough, if you want to, it's okay. But I think it's a real miss if you don't try. And don't engage with someone you don't trust. Don't engage with someone you're not comfortable and sense that they deliver. I mean, go the extra yard and figure out their work. Let them present to you one more time. Talk to a client of theirs, go the extra yard to figure out. I mean, that's clearly very important so that you have a good trust in it. I think that's kind of critical.
Partnerships are like relationships. I mean, so a lot of the do's and don'ts you'd have for a relationship, okay, less the romantic angle, but setting the romantic angle aside, I actually think a lot of the do's and don'ts apply there. I mean, whether it's in terms of building trust and setting boundaries, having empathy for where, I mean, it's sort of like trying to walk a mile in the other person's shoes too, right? I mean, Laurenz and I have had our fair share of heated disputes over various things, right? Yeah, no relationship has or at least I don't know of any relationship that has no fights or no disagreements, right? So I always say it's an important skill to know how to fight so that you can understand where people are coming from. You can step back and kind of regroup and figure out like, okay, where does this need to go next?
I have a very simple filter. Do I like them? And if they can do the work, great. If they have those two things, we could probably make something work. I have a lightning round, a special one, because I split it in two for you guys. Are you ready for the lightning round?
All right.
The lightning round.
I'll start the first one with Laurenz. You get a new project. What do you want first? A clear brief or total freedom?
Total freedom would feel better.
For Eddie, you get a new opportunity. What excites you more? Messy data or clear direction?
I mean, I hate messy data. So just by default, it's clear direction. I'm surprised, but I mean, this is the funny thing, like Laurenz's answer to the previous lightning round question. I mean, like, man, I would so much 100% prefer a clear brief. I want to know what they want, or I want them to know what they want.
Okay, let me give you one of my best clients I've ever had is she used to work at the Hilton Group, and we would have coffee, and she would just tell me about her business problems. So it would give me the ultimate freedom to tell her what I think is the best approach to solve that problem. So I don't necessarily want someone, and I think that's where we're different, because you are left with this data and you need to figure it out. And for me, it's like I want to understand the problem, but I don't want to have a clear brief. I'd rather write the brief myself, solving that problem, right? I depend on how detailed the brief gets. But if the brief is just, here's my business problem, it's very clear what the problem is, then I want to have a brief. But I want to have it at the highest possible level so I can break it down in the way I'm thinking the most effectively, and then see whether the client likes it and explore that. I'm just wired that way.
I remember getting a brief once that was, wow us. I was like, go away. What to say to that? Sorry,
Okay.
we're interrupting the flow of your lightning. Your lightning round is becoming very sluggish.
Absolutely fine. It's sometimes lightning is a bit slower. It's okay. Laurenz, for you then, a biggest red flag in a client request?
Cheap and good.
Eddie, same question for you.
It's actually hard to dispute cheap and good being a huge red flag. Very specifically on my side, it's also like, it goes back to the lack of clear brief. I mean, for the stuff that we do day to day, day in and day out, I mean, around data, like if you can't articulate the problem, like, so if you don't have a clear brief where, yeah, I mean, it doesn't need to detail the steps of how to address it, but it needs to clearly articulate the problem that they're trying to solve. And when they can't articulate it, yeah, I mean, aside from the other client I was joking about earlier, it said, where the brief was kind of basically wow us. I remember we had another one, and it was similar, I mean, almost that, right? We have no idea what we want to do. We have some budget, but we don't know what we want. Come propose. I mean, yeah, that can be a lot of freedom, but I just feel like,
man, seriously.
But no, they know, they have something in their head, right? They should pony up a little bit to articulate that.
But see,
that's
Eddie,
a big red flag.
We work so well together. I'm happy to this uncertainty part of it, and I know you want to have a very clear direction in terms of what is it they want to figure out. And I understand from your side of the business. From my side of the business, it gives me the whole liberty of making a project that I want. So I don't know. I mean, I hear you, and there's reasons for having a clear brief, and I'm with you. But that's where I reside. I love this. If a client is open for it, then as well.
Okay. I don't even know where I was. I think it was question number 3.
It's still lightning.
Lightning.
All right. So next one is for Laurenz then. Who should lead the client relationship? Commercial, data, or delivery person?
I think delivery, because I mean, at the end, that's the heart and the soul in terms of what you're selling, is what you deliver. So you should be in control as much as it's possible.
Eddie, what is a bigger partnership killer? Ego or lack of clarity?
I want to say, as a knee-jerk answer, ego, just because I think outsized egos just rub me wrong, But I assume, like, longer term, if someone continues to like have a kind of lack of clarity in how they express themselves or what they need and want, that might be a killer too. And maybe you can get over the ego. But my knee-jerk, like, off the cuff response would be ego.
Laurenz, if I would ask your wife, what does Laurenz do actually? What would she say?
She would probably say he is blessed with doing his own thing at his own time, because she is a teacher and she has to be at a certain time, a certain place with certain people. I think she would value the freedom of work that I have. And I think that's kind of what she would see as the first. She knows that I'm into psychology and very strategic and consulting and all that. But I think she would talk more about how I work, because it is annoying for her, because I think to an extent she would like to have the same.
How about your wife, Eddie?
I think strangely similar, except for instead of psychology, they would just default to, oh, he does something in IT. But I mean, I think really the other night she literally was offering my help to some friends at dinner who had gotten a new computer. And I was like, I don't know how to set up their
Eddie, set
computer.
it up.
Yes, but yeah, I mean, my wife, as you know, is a lawyer, a corporate lawyer, and so she also has, very rigid demands on time and being in the office, at these times for these people. And I've often heard her say, so it's not even hypothetical, like, Eddie, you're so free. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want, and so. Although, I find this, on the other hand, to be really frustrating, because it's not
tough.
like we're living in some, la la land of, lollipops and I don't know, whatever. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's a different kind of freedom.
Yeah, I agree. But it's always what we don't have, right? So that's what I'm saying. It's like, yeah, you described the other one has something that I don't have. And I would love to go to an office and be always in a structured environment, sometimes at least. So you always look at something that you don't have, I suppose, right? But overall, I appreciate my flexibility and my freedom. I do.
Speaking of appreciation, last one. Laurenz, what do you most appreciate about Eddie?
His capability on the one hand side. I mean, he knows what he's doing. It's really, working with professionals is something very liberating. So I love that. And on the other side, and he just mentioned it, he doesn't have, he can be a princess here and there, but he doesn't have a big ego. So, I mean, having someone who's really damn good at something and not coming along with a big ego is a real blessing. So I love him for that. I'm not only for that, but that's something I really appreciate.
You get to return the favor, Eddie.
So I always appreciate Laurenz for bringing to the table, like, all the stuff that I really can't, in terms of, I mean, as much as I give Laurenz a hard time for, he's at the club again playing tennis. Yeah, I feel like, in many ways I'm the whatever, stereotypical or classic introvert, right? I mean, I in the sense that, like, I can put myself out there, but it's really draining for me, and like it's not ever something I look forward to. And I mean, Laurenz has so much more optimism about the world, our clients, our potential projects, and so on. And I always feel like I'm being a downer on so many things, and he's a great counterbalance to that. And I mean, I really enjoy working with Laurenz, talking to him. Laurenz comes up with ideas left and right. Yeah, I really love Laurenz for all of that, positivity. And his version of, like, when he was talking about capabilities on my end, same thing on a different set of capabilities on his end. But I guess the other thing is, though, I mean, slightly more seriously, but I mean, just because I've had 1, 2, 3 companies that I've, run myself, and been a part of a variety of startups before then. So I definitely have come to really value and appreciate someone that you really can trust, to do what they say, and that is, I mean, fundamentally, like, honorable in how they interact with you, and you see them interact with others. I feel like I didn't used to think that should be such a rare and valuable thing. I've come to appreciate that it really is special to find that in somebody.
There's so much love.
Yeah, absolutely. And it should be. There's a great quote which reminds me of what you just said. If you want to go somewhere fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with somebody else. And I think this is a really great case for partnering with people, whatever that's a very formal or informal partnership. I would recommend anybody listening here to step out of your world, even if it's just connecting with people, getting some different ideas from people, realizing what you don't do well, maybe outsourcing that. That's like the coldest way. Or maybe you just find somebody within your network to fill some of that gap. Why not? And it's a bit of a leap of faith. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where can people find you?
Online.
At the tennis club, obviously. But
tennis club. It's Singapore, clubbing away. It's just online, I suppose, right? So we're under Duxton Consulting, and because Eddie is not even on LinkedIn, I think, right? No.
So Duxton it is.
Talking about good at marketing, you know.
Wonderful. I'll make sure to leave the links below. Eddie's harder to find, but you can always find Eddie through Laurenz. Thank you both for being part of this conversation. This is a little bit different from what I normally do. Normally it's a one-on-one. It's funny how serendipity works, and then I got you guys in contact. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing so bigly. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Well, absolutely. Beautiful.
Fantastic. Before I leave you with my thoughts, I just want to say a big thank you to both Eddie and Laurenz for sharing here on the podcast. And make sure you check out the show notes. I'll leave some links how you can get in touch with them. Just go tell them, said hi. Tell them you listened to this episode. And if you are enjoying topics like this for your own solo journey, for your own independent journey, there's a weekly podcast I write about topics exactly like these, and it's called The Solo Sauce. I'll leave a link in the description below. All right, here's some thoughts that I had thinking about partnerships and partnering with other people. There's a spectrum in partnerships. You could argue that on one side, the coldest side would be something like where you just hire somebody, you bring him in for a specific know-how or capability. On the other hand is, real partnerships, maybe where you both invest in setting up a new venture, a new business or something like that. There's a spectrum there. But what I think is important is that when you work for yourself, it can get quite isolated. You might end up on this little island and there's only so much you can do. So it's probably a good idea to build some partnerships, some clever connections with the people around you that maybe you work with, maybe you just use them to bounce off some ideas with, maybe you help each other on something. But partnerships is what really makes the world go round. So how about you? Are you building partnerships around you? And are you reaching out to your network and see how you can help each other? Anyway, those are just some thoughts. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Make it a great day.